Welcome to 8 Limbs. This is episode 2. I'm your host, Drayton Michaels. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing dog prejudice, pit bulls, fight dogs, and pit bull advocacy. The link between legit dog training without the use of fear and pain-based methods and breed-specific legislation or breed discrimination, that's the bond that's going to unify both the camps. And believe me, the advocates need the legitimate dog trainers and behaviorists on board, and I think most, if not the vast majority of them are. As we know, if any of us who've been following the saga of the American Pit Bull Terrier, the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, or the American Staffordshire Terrier, or any dog that even remotely looks like it could be a pit bull, we know about breed-specific legislation, or BSL as it's known, and the lack of effectiveness that it has in the goal that the anti-pit bull lobby is trying to achieve, which is to reduce dog bites and fatalities. BSL is ineffective from a financial standpoint. There's been some 40 years now where there's been some kind of BSL all around the world. England did it in the 90s, and they ended up spending millions to enforce the breed ban. And that's the problem, is that you have to have enforcement if you're going to have these laws on the books, and they find that it's just too costly and not effective. It's ineffective at reducing dog bites or fatalities that are, caused by dog bites. It's just, it isn't going to, banning breeds of dogs will not stop dogs from biting. Fear is the underlying cause for aggression, and there is a criteria that is involved with all lethal or fatal dog bite incidents, and the criteria repeats over and over, whether it's in part or total, with every single incident that involves a fatality from dog bites or lethal dog bites. So there's been enough time throughout the last 40 years to really have the data that shows breed-specific legislation and breed bans are not effective for achieving the goals that the people who put them in place want, which is reduce dog bites and reduce fatalities by the cause of dog bites. So legislation is not effective when it comes to helping people reduce dog bites. Education, not legislation. That's what's going to get dog bites reduced, and that's what's going to get problems with dogs that people have solved. Simply, if you're educated, whether you are a dog guardian or whether you are an attorney or somebody who just doesn't like dogs, when you have proper education and you can remove your bias and all the baggage you have, and you can actually learn about dogs legitimately, then everybody's safe, and everybody has the proper information to go about creating safe environments. There's a recent bite incident in Montreal, Canada, that involved an off-leash boxer, and this resulted in a ban on pit bulls and other various bully breeds. And this is how it starts. First it's pit bulls, then it's bully breeds, and it's a slippery slope. A recent incident in Atlanta, Georgia, left children injured. Sadly, one child died. I want to send my deepest sympathies to the family of that child and all the other children who were bitten and traumatized that day. From what I understand in the media reports, these dogs were running loose, and that is how they had access to these children, and that's how this incident occurred. However, banning dogs or types of dogs will not protect anyone's children. And one of the dogs in the Atlanta incident was a border collie, and another was a pit bull type dog. So why are there, discussions about a ban on pit bulls? Why not border collies? And that again, goes to the question of, well, where does it end? So if in the next 4 or 5 years, another breed of dog for some reason ends up being a dog that people think is involved in most of these incidents, are they going to ban those dogs? Pretty soon, we're not going to have dogs at all, or just certain kinds of small dogs? Well, all dogs bite, people, and all people need to be educated to learn how to take care of dogs better, and to also make sure that people are aware of the warning signs so that they can make sure that the dogs that are in their care are getting the proper help. All dogs can end up in a bad situation and bite someone. And if the argument is, well, certain kinds of dogs are more prone, that is not true. And at the end of the day, all aggression is rooted in fear. So we need to learn how to take care of dogs properly and make sure that they don't have any overly generalized fears. What's needed in Atlanta, what's needed in Montreal, what's needed in any state, what's needed in any country or city or town or municipality or environment, regardless of the state or their laws, we need better proactive education for dog guardians, people working with dogs, and the general public. So with the amount of time and energy and money that's spent with froofy-poofy stories about dogs and movies about dogs and memes about dogs, which is fine, but, there are those of us who are trying to get the real information out to people so that dogs can live better lives and have safer outcomes. Education will save lives and reduce dog bites, not banning dogs. Let me say it again. Education, proper education, will save lives and reduce dog bites, not banning them. Okay, so let's talk about pit bull dogs. Quite arguably the most talked about dogs on the planet. Dogs that are labeled as pit dogs were dogs that were bred to work in a bull pit, herding bulls and cattle, or in a fight pit. Just as labs are known for retrieving and labs get lumped in and all called labs, I'm sure that an aficionado of Labrador retrievers would debate and educate the differences and the purposes of the various Labrador retrievers. So dogs that are actually known to be bona fide pit dogs are American Pit Bull Terriers, American Staffordshire Terriers, and the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, or the Staffordshire Terrier. All the other dogs are not dogs that were originally intended for pit work, just as all collies are not border collies. Now, the pit bull subject and the pit bull topic is big, and we're going to take that on in other episodes. But one thing I want to clear up is this notion of fight dogs, or that pit bulls have some form of extra aggression towards dogs or humans. People want to throw out the genetics card when they have no idea how genetics works. I admit I have a cursory understanding, but enough to know that genetics do not predict behavior. So people need to stop tossing out this card and saying it's in the genetics. Genetics is a crapshoot, and there's many variables, both prenatal and postnatal. And the effect of genetic development is something that is not just a one-time event. Genes and genetics and DNA and brain chemistry, so forth, change all throughout a dog's life. So whether it's in the dog's puppyhood, adolescence, juvenile phase of development, or adulthood, dogs are making changes just as humans do. There are no such thing as fight dogs. Okay, so let's get that straight. There's no such thing as fight dogs. There's only dog fighters. Dogs, be they pit bull terriers or other breeds and mixes, do quite a bit of ritualized aggression, a lot of protracted warning signs. And a dog typically would not choose to go into a 16 by 16 enclosure where there was another strange dog that they didn't know unless their life depended on it and their survival depended on it. So when humans bring dogs into a 16 by 16 box or pit to fight, that is the human dictating and orchestrating that event. Okay? The dogs are not able to escape and enact their flight response. So all they have is fight or freeze. Very stressful. So to the notion that, well, some dogs are good at fighting, they seem to like it, because people have tossed that out as a hypothesis with obviously no understanding. No creature likes to be in extreme stress mode where their life is on the line. And those that do are rare. Not everybody is a boxer or a martial artist or likes to jump out of planes or join the military. Now, there is good stress, okay? So not all stress is bad, but in a situation where your life is on the line and you are in a box and it's either fight or lose and possibly die, then that's bad stress. Now, pit bull dogs that do fare well and go back and fight again, because remember now, dog fighters aren't going to say, come on, let's go, time to go fight. They're bringing the dog in an enclosure, in a cage, or on a leash, and the dog, if they're resistant, they'll just get another dog. And as a matter of fact, nowadays, they'll just shoot that dog because they're wasting their time and their money. So the dog can't have any resistance to doing this. The reason why I believe some dogs go back and do it without hesitation is the same reason why dogs can herd bulls. That's a stressful event, possibly life ending as well, because herding bulls is dangerous. Is because those dogs can handle the stress. They have the proper brain chemistry and they can handle the stress. Doesn't mean they enjoy it. They can just bounce back from it. When I interviewed Dr. Karen Overall, she illustrated that working dogs, regardless of the work, 90% of the dogs bred for a purpose do not pass that test to do that job. This is due to the variances in genetics and the humans training the dogs, as well as the environments they're trained in. Lewis Colby, a famous breeder of pit bull dogs, said of his dog, my guess is if you were to take anybody's strain, ours included, probably out of every 100 dogs, there wouldn't be more than 5 or 10 dogs that were completely game. Now, game in this sense is a dog that is going to fight any dog they're placed in the pit with. That's much different than the way people use the word game now. So the original intended purpose for a game dog was a dog that was going to fight. Now, it might also meant the dog was also going to chase those bulls if needed, or grab onto the side of an animal if needed when they were used for hunting. But again, in both of those contexts, and I'm sure there are plenty of pit bull dogs throughout history who absolutely loved herding bulls. So the stress is different. In one case, we've got dogs who are stressed because they are placed in a pit against another dog, and that is possibly life-ending. And then in the other, we have stress that involves herding bulls, which is different. There's room to move. They have their flight response fully engaged. They may enjoy that work. They may not 100% enjoy it. There may be some stresses, but they go back and herd the bulls. So there is a level of reinforcement to it. My theory is that any dog that goes back into a 16 by 16 box to fight dogs and does not resist has the cognition to handle the stress, period. Now, the same could be said for cattle dogs as well. And like I just said, there's different environmental contingencies with dogs who are herding cattle, even though it could be life-threatening or injurious. They're dogs who, the dogs who do cattle work have their flight response. They're allowed to move. Now, in future shows, I'm going to discuss this theory that, dogs who do this type of work and fight dogs, they can handle the stress, and it's got to do with their cognition being able to process the stress. In short, it has to do with the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the thalamus. And again, we're going to do more on this in future episodes. Suffice it to say, whether it's Dr. Karen Overall or the legendary breeder Lewis Colby, the consensus of these two opposites, mind you. Colby and Overall aren't friends. They're not colluding here. These are two hypotheses that were made at separate points in history with no conversation between the two people. So both Dr. Karen Overall and breeder Lewis Colby, their consensus is that pit bull dogs are not born in some fight mode ready to fight dogs, that it's rare, that not all of them are able to handle the stress. So for me, that underscores my hypothesis, which is the dogs that do it without any resistance, and they keep going back until they can't for one reason or another, simply have the right stuff in their brains to do it. And that's the most pedestrian way I can explain it. Again, it has to do with, in my belief, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the thalamus areas of the brain, and how those regions are processing stress. In terms of dogs directing aggression towards humans, whether they're pit bull dogs or bully dogs or collies or shepherds or whatever the breed of the dog is, the vast majority of cases that are reported to emergency rooms, some 4.5 million bites are reported to emergency rooms every year, it's due to the humans doing something to the dog. Or the dog has an extreme lack of socialization, there's been some harsh training, and the dog winds up with an overly generalized fear. And when those dogs get loose, they are at a higher risk of biting someone. Now, any research, even cursory research into how genetics works in DNA, it shows the environment is the biggest predictor and influence on behavior. And anyone with a shred of critical thinking, you can see that it's not the dogs that are the issue, it's humans. Humans breed dogs, humans hopefully care for dogs, and humans are responsible for dogs being safe and properly contained. So all of the blame and the responsibility falls with the human when it comes to dog behavior. It always comes back to the human, it always comes back to education, it always comes back to common sense. Now, that last one may be the biggest challenge because common sense, in many cases, is a big problem with dogs and why they don't do so well. So let's run down the criteria for fatal and lethal dog bite incidents where humans are severely bitten or killed. These dogs that are involved in these incidents, and I call this the Delise Criteria because Karen Delise, who is the author of The Pitbull Placebo, a fantastic book. This is where this information derives from, and it's also information that was culled over 150 years of dog bite records. So the criteria for fatal and lethal dog bite incidents include dogs that are kept for breeding, fighting, protection, or other nefarious purposes, dogs not spayed or neutered, dogs roaming loose, children and dogs left unattended, domestic violence, which doesn't always get included, multiple dogs, and harsh training or abuse of some kind. Those are all human behaviors. Those are all the results of human choices. Okay, so that's what is part of all lethal or fatal dog bite incidences that have been recorded over the last 150, 160 years. And sadly, the media doesn't always dig deep enough to detail these criteria. They just blame the breed of dog. Every now and then they'll, report that the dog was abused, but mostly the headline reads, "Pit bull kills child," and there's very little else in the article to find out why this happened. The CDC reports there's 4.5 million dog bites every year reported to emergency rooms, and these bites are typically to people that dogs know or have contact with regularly, and the average bite is on par with a kitchen or playground accident. So if you've ever cut yourself really bad while you're cutting something in the kitchen, or you have fallen off the jungle gym and you have bruised your knee really bad, that's the typical dog bite. Okay, so that gets reported to emergency rooms. I would say there's even more bites that are not reported because they don't cause harm. And those are, those bites that don't get reported are a testament to dogs as a species having phenomenal bite inhibition. Considering that a dog 25, 35 pounds and up could take off a human thumb or a finger with very little effort. Considering that dogs bite 25 times in 4 seconds. Considering there are 35 some odd thousand stray dogs in St. Louis, Missouri. There's another 2 million stray feral dogs running around in Los Angeles. Where are the stories of packs of wild dogs killing and mauling people on a daily basis? You're never going to hear those stories because they don't exist. Yes, of course, there are stories throughout history where packs of dogs have killed a person or a child. Yes, but it is a rare occurrence. Okay, dogs are not looking to cause any problems. Bottom line is humans and dogs do very well together risk-wise. Humans need to get their act together and get the proper education. I know that sounds like a broken record, but that's really what the answer to this is. If anybody has concerns, is get the proper education. Right now, as it stands, there's 77 million registered dogs in America. There's some 300 million humans. and they're all mixing and mingling through all different socioeconomic and environmental factors. There is an extremely low risk that anyone will ever be bitten or killed by a dog. Your car ride to work is fraught with more risk than dogs and humans interacting. Okay, so again, it's not a matter of these types of dogs are dangerous and these aren't, or these types of dogs are more prone to bite. The bottom line is that when you look at the environment and the history of the dog and the history of the people, that leads you to the answers as why the incident occurred. It's that simple. So we need to have, journalism do their job. We need to have media do their job. We need to have dog guardians do their job, shelters and rescues. We need trainers to do their job and make sure they're educating their clients about proper, safe ways to not only train their dogs without fear and pain, but also how to maintain their dogs with fencing and gates in their home and proper leashes and harnesses so that dogs are safe and humans are safe. Once we have the proper education and people get that information, then you see bites get lowered and you see dogs get saved in shelters. You see people do better. It's just that simple. Thanks for tuning in to 8 Limbs. I've been your host, Drayton Michaels. I just want to let you guys know we have some great interviews coming up. Hope you guys tune into them. We have Deirdre Franklin of the Advocacy Supergroup Pinups for Pit Bulls. We have attorney Letty Van Kevage of Best Friends. We have Ali Delacour from Why Does My Dog, who has a great film in production right now. It'll be coming out soon. It's all about pit bulls and breed-specific legislation, and I'm happy to say that I was part of that film. We also have Sabrina Miganaka, who is from Montreal. She's a positive trainer and an advocate for pit bulls, and she's going to be discussing the situation in Montreal and the breed-specific legislation that was recently passed there. Thanks for watching 8 Limbs. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm your host, Drayton Michaels. Please visit the Facebook page, and also please watch the interviews we have posted on our YouTube channel, 8 Limbs, Strengthening the Canine Human Bond. Remember, behavior's in the environment, not in the dog. So if you create safe, positive environments, your dog is learning good things and positive things about the world around them. This is 8 Limbs. Thank you so much, and until next time, be well.